I'm very honoured to be here, actually. I'm a rather unconventional background. I was sort of a university dropout way back, and ended up driving buses for 13 years around the city. Wrote a couple of history books on public transport and social issues in Christchurch. And have been interested in public transport from February the 2nd, 1970, the day I read the Time magazine that predicted global warming, as it was then called, and I thought, oh, this is going to be wrecked just for cars. And so I've lived quite a big chunk of my life without cars, apart from when we had, I was doing shift work and had young children, and haven't had a car for 10 years. So now I catch buses a lot, and I've got quite a lot of background in bus driving. So it's a little bit of down-to-earth view of public transport. It's a two things, I think. One is that people often talk about public transport in a very general way, not in any way criticising, but just the same as that blog there, that so many people got access to a bus route. My experience is it's very site-specific, it's very timing-specific. You can have a bus route through an area, but it be made no use at all if it doesn't really link in the right way. A second problem, I think, of the issue is that everybody is an expert on public transport. They've seen a bus, they've caught a bus, and they immediately think it's simple. Oh, we're chucking a bus, or we're chucking a train. Even though I'm an amateur, I'm very aware it's an engineering field as complicated as building bridges or as any other form of engineering to get it done well. And even though I'm a sort of socialist at heart, I hate seeing public money wasted. So I like to see effective use. I don't even think we need to play the moral claim that bus use is superior, morally superior to catching a car. It should be so good and so effective that people catch it because they want to. Since the internet came into being, about 12 years ago, I suppose, I started getting very much more into it. And maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, I started to seriously try to follow themes. And one thing I particularly did was take on board what Wendell Cox, who's a sort of right-wing American transport advocate of sorts, said that when speaking in Wellington, that New Zealand should be comparing itself to the other colonies, the 4 colonies he called them, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and America, because these countries are all low-density countries, low density on a national basis, as well as few taxpayers, big land area, low-density cities, a lot of sprawl, high wealth, high car ownership, all these factors that affect how you do public transport, and adapting the European or Asian models is often not going to work very well in the New Zealand context. So I started out to see how many cities between 300,000 and 1 million there were in these 4 countries, and it took me about 2 years on and off of sort of big lists and working through and going to the transit departments of America and the city population and that sort of stuff. Wikipedia, and it's rubbish, but it's very useful for a lot of stuff like density and links to different things. There's roughly about 120 cities, a little bit hard to define what defines a city, but I take metropolitan area, anything within the commuting range. Usually that's easy. Most of those countries have a census district for metropolitan area census. There's 120 cities in that sort of range, about Christchurch size. Most of them in America. There's only one of those cities has light rail. That's Tacoma in Washington. That was $80 million to build, I think it's about 3 kilometres to the central city. $80 million. It carries about 1 million people, about the same amount of people as our shuttle bus around the city carried, which probably cost about $2 million to set up. So it's a very expensive form of transport. Checking out for heavy rail, commuter rail as I went along. There's only one city out of 120 cities in those 4 countries. I call them Kansas. CA, Canada, New Zealand, blah, blah. Yeah. There's only one city which has a commuter rail system of its own, and that's Wellington, New Zealand. Some of the cities like Bridgeport and Connecticut and Newcastle, New South Wales have commuter rail to other centres, but it'd be very doubtful they'd have a commuter rail of their own, and most of them only run peak hours or don't run 7 days a week. Only Wellington's running a full commuter service, and there's obviously some very good geographic and historical facts why Wellington does that, and it works pretty well for Wellington. So I just think it's good to put those sort of things in proportion when we're talking about it. There's several cities, Waterloo in Canada, Victoria and Canada, looking at putting in light rail. All of them have quite a lot of articles in the newspapers about the amount of the rates the local property taxes will have to go up by, and it's quite substantial. In Ottawa, they're also shifting. They've had a very successful busway system, but it was built at a time when transport started to decline, so they went through a long dip before it took off. And they never put in the infrastructure, never had the political clout to get the infrastructure in the centre of the city, so now it's this crowd of buses in the peak hour, so they're trying to go to light rail. About $2 billion it's going to cost. And again, they're looking at property. When you buy a property, you pay a transit rate over there. It's going to go from $3,000 up to about $10,000 over a 15-year period to cover the cost of that and other transport improvements. Now, just sorry, let's see what we've got here. There is a difference. Canada and Australia and New Zealand are very similar. America, there's a much lower level of investment in public transport. It's rather ironic, actually, the mayor that went to America. It's probably one of the least developed public transport systems in the world, really, across the states. Canada carries virtually twice as many people per capita as America does on its public transport systems. Much more successful. Investment in public transport in America is tied very much to sales tax and things like that. It's been declining. They've had the best year they've ever had since 1953 in public transport, and yet they're cutting services left, right and centre because, and this is one of the things that could happen here too, I think, is as the economy gets more into problems, it's one of the easiest things to cut that seems to be the most wasteful is public transport. Even though logically it should be the last thing you should be cutting when things are going downhill like that. But yeah, Canada, New Zealand, Australia and Canada have about 25 cities in that bracket. It's quite a good match to Christchurch. The ones who are doing public transport best are Victoria and Canada. Just on the basis of people carry about 22 million passengers a year. Halifax in Canada is about 20 million a year. We were about 17 million a year, and we've dropped dramatically. So we're doing very well, and yet, relatively speaking, and yet you look on the census for 2006, and only 1% of people in Christchurch caught public transport to work in the morning. And a good reminder of how difficult it is to do public transport well, how hard it is to get people onto it. The fact that we carry about, I think, across 4% for all trips are done by public transport reflects we have a very good 7-day-a-week overall coverage, probably better than most cities. We're still getting regular services on weekends, evenings, probably good school services, whatever, but the actual commuter services aren't working very well. And one of the reasons, of course, is the city is quite compact. It's quite easy to get in and out, and parking is quite cheap, and that's something people often forget, is it's the parking cost that gets people onto trams and that. Like Melbourne is the 5th most expensive city in the world to park in all day, and I think Auckland's like $29 a day average or something, whatever. But Christchurch, we've actually got this disastrous problem for public transport now, is that we're going to have a massive amount of parking space from all the empty sections. But we probably will have enormous congestion if we cut out the one-way systems and cut out the centre of the city. We're going to have enormous congestion around the 4 Avenue level of people getting in and out. So Christchurch has been very advanced in terms of technology. It's a long way ahead of a lot of other cities with things like the Metro card. It's still coming in throughout. It's not even in Sydney yet. It's still coming in into Ottawa still hasn't got it yet. Canada, lots of places have not got it, quite big cities. Same low-floor buses, we've got a very high percentage of those. And like at the moment, the northern Melbourne people are complaining because the disabled people can't get on the trams they're using there because they're using older trams in northern Melbourne, because that's another little factor of light rail, is it's very static. It's very hard to change the vehicles in a hurry. Anyway, so I think, to me, there's another thing about congestion, is it's not only absolute, it's proportional. It's 50% increase in travel time for someone who's travelling 10 minutes is another 5 minutes. But if they've got a 40-minute journey and it takes them 20 minutes longer, that's 40 minutes a day they're losing. And so to me, public transport, one of the main things that should be focusing on is the longer journeys, because these are the people that create the most pollution. create the most congestion by being stopping at many stops, and they're going to be the ones most suffering from oil going up. And of course, they also suffer the most congestion. So if we could get ways of getting people on the outer rim of the city into the city or across the city much faster, that to me would be a very good goal to go for. And I've been advocating for a long time busways, segregated busways, one coming off the back of Belfast and down around I often don't know how well you know the area, but through Redcliffe Road and rejoining onto Grimsey's Road and going under the QE2 and up over a ramp over Cranford Street and down the back of onto Rutland Street and down through Rutland Street and Caledonia Road into the city that way. Involves buying a certain amount of land and housing. And our city has been very, very shy. As far as I know, there's only one house ever been bought for public transport. Wellington, Auckland, the Armiti scheme is buying 329 houses. I think a Waterview Tunnel is going to take 172 houses. I'm not saying we should go and buy them for the sake of it, but to build good transport, I think you've got to be prepared to buy the land and create the corridors. Coming from Belfast on a busway, on the express bus that you could come to in about 10 minutes into the centre of the city this way, 12 minutes maybe, you know. Just one or two key stops, it's all preloaded. They have little platforms at busways, little platform stations. You pay your Metro card to get into the station. When the doors open at the right space, you hop on all the doors, off to go again. But there is a sort of busism, you know. I find just like there's racism and sexism, there's a busism that always downgrades buses, you know. I always think they're like mum. They go and they do all the hard work and then don't get any honour or grammar in that. But 80% of the world's public transport is buses, according to the UITP, the International Transport Federation. And even in light rail systems, they always have to play a big role. And there's quite a prejudice against buses. And especially with this light rail, which to me is a little bit of spin really with that name light rail. I mean, of course in Melbourne they call them trams, and some other places they have sort of slightly bigger things that go on rails. So I've cottoned onto this word light bus network. Because to me you have to design a network, you have to design a grid network. I really believe we're still at a very unsophisticated level. When I was a bus driver, little old ladies would take hours to get up those high steps and don't get old driver, you know, and then they'd take their money out and all these things very slow. The buses would break down. We had no radio, had no way of knowing where buses were. All this is gone. We've got GPS, we've got low floor buses that load fast. The Metro card is a marvellous thing for speeding up travel now. The buses hardly stop at all compared to the old days when, you know, we used to have 15 different fare structures. So when you're going from this street to that street, that's be 80 cents. No, it's not. The last driver said 70 cents. We got right past that. We should not be running buses like we are now. We should be running buses as a consistent network, and they go at the same time every hour. I think two patterns from after 9 o'clock in the morning, because all buses have to go into the waves to hit the 8:30 sort of start in the mornings. Sunday and Saturday morning are very quiet, but 9 to 6 or 9 to 7 weekdays and Saturday, I just think they should run on the same pattern, and they always go through. You know that if you catch a 9:10 bus, when you get to that stop, you can get off there, and the 9:27 or something goes through there, going that way. And it's a bit like the Aborigine song lines. I mean, teenagers or people who use buses a lot will just have them in their head. This is the way you go there, this is the way you go there. And there'd be more than one way of going, because sometimes you can go there and up there, and sometimes there and up there. So I call that light bus network, but it depends upon technology, and it depends upon getting rid of the congestion points, the sticking points. And this often to me is not about putting bus lanes that are operating part of the time. It's actually cutting corridors, taking out some houses, building a nice little boulevard with a cycleway there and trees there, but also a busway, and only buses can use it, and it joins up two streets that can't be joined, and a certain amount of subways too. To get the longer journeys from that, the Parklands East area into the city, I think they should be coming in and going under Linwood Avenue at Worcester Street. And that's about $12 million to build something like that, but it means you don't have to fight all the traffic. And it recognises that the journey to the mall or from the mall to the city are quite short journeys. The congestion time won't be that much, but the journey out beyond that rim to get into the central city is the one they're losing time, and it's the best chance of the city making it so good that they want to use it. People want to use it because it's just so fast to get in and out to the city. So I've probably got a bit away from peak oil here, but this is my field. It all ties in. So I'm talking about targeting longer journeys. I also see I think carpooling is a very big one too that needs to be looked at. It's, particularly in all the rural areas around, like out of Christchurch. Now I sort of see some synthesis there between buses and carpools. That they've got a little program going at the moment to put bus shelters for rural school kids all over New Zealand. Undercover Kids it's called, and they build these, and I think you could build these where there were also pods where people could carpool from. Some of it's just casual carpooling, but you've had things like San Francisco. They've had for 30 years. They've had spots where you pull in and people wait. You don't have to. It's just a constant thing. You just look at people. If you don't like the look of them, you don't do anything. You don't take them, but you can. I just think a lot of the rural areas could be serviced from this sort of level where a bus also went through. And it sounds a funny idea, but I think that people won't trust carpools as long as the person who's running the car might be sick one day or has to go somewhere else and can't take them. And they won't catch buses just in themselves because it's too limiting. But the two together, if there was a sort of bus that's meant to the same pattern, I think it could work quite well, addressing longer journeys there. The latest my blog thing is I finally gave up thinking that I could beat the system on rail, because everybody loves rail so much, and for quite a long time I've advocated this, so I've just put it on the blog in the last few days. And if we're going to spend $400 million on some sort of rail variant in Christchurch, I think a much more practical scheme would be to link the railway line from just below the Styx Bridge there. I think it's called Barnett Road. There's very few houses, and it goes straight into paddocks, which are all going to be the upper Styx housing area in the long run. Some of it I think has been earthquake damage and they won't be using that land, but most of it will. That goes right across towards the airport, before it hits the airport sound zone. But taking a railway line straight across there and then along through Johns Road area, down through the airport. Now you could go right underneath Orchard Road and the cut and cover trench and put an underground station. There are cheaper options too, but I'm trying to keep it grade separated. Then down to join up at Islington, and then you've got a loop right round like that, and you've got a spur going up to Rangiora, and you've got a spur going off to Wollaston, and you've got a spur that could go down to about Chapman's Road and Apara, mainly in the peak hours, probably just Ensworth Road other times. Not to Littleton, I'm afraid, because I think Littleton is a totally impractical place to put a suburban rail system into in the modern situation, with a small population without the big labour force it used to have there. So I think for about $400 million for that link, and I think that Kiwi Rail or the government would be building most of that, not a taxpayer here, and it would bring us in line with Wellington. To be honest, when judging by those figures, it's shooting way above our weight as a city, and yet it's probably a good time to do it, but they're all likely to go up. With the earthquake money, whatever, with the fact that $400 million is now being put on the table as a possibility of what we're going to want to spend. And this would really tie in the outer areas, and especially if the area around the rugby league grounds, the Addington Racecourse area, became what has been suggested as a big recreational sporting event centre area that virtually goes 7 days a week with its own semi-village there. You've got a rail link. You want to go to the rugby, you just park your car in the car park in Belfast, you hop on that train, takes you right around. There's a quick way in, and then there's the loop ways, and you can do all sorts of different loops so that what amounts to say 3 or 4 trains would actually be running 8 services. Have I gone over time? So if you like to look at this, the blog NZ in Transit, it's idiosyncratical, so I think it's me. It's like all blogs, a bit personal, and probably some of the things are totally wrong, but that's just the way, if it's 80% right, that's still 80% in the right area, that's good. I think that's all I have to say.
Did you say the first name again?
NZ in Transit. The Transit's spelled Tranzit, one of my usual silly puns.
You could write it up on the board.
Oh, okay, I'll write that, yeah. Well, let's... so I just think it's... there's no easy answers, but this... I'd say basically getting... we spend roughly about $60-70 million a year on public transport in Christchurch. Half it's from the fares, the rest from the taxpayer and the ratepayer. it seems to me ludicrous not to be spending $1 million or $2 million here and there to give buses a complete free run, so that when those people up at these Preston's or Highland, is it Highland Park? No, Highfield, yeah. All these people like that should be able to get into the city really fast, just because it goes boom, straight through all these back streets, not in a wobbly way, but just straight through. And that ties the city together, and the railway would do the same, you know. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.